Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to your HIMediaTV news update. I am your host, and from Reuters, Putin foe Alexei Navaly dies in jail. West holds Russia responsible by Guy Falconbridge and Felix Light. Alexei Navaly, the Russian President Vladimir Putin's most formidable domestic opponent, fell unconscious and died on Friday after a walk at the Polar Wolf Arctic penal colony, where he was serving a 3-decade sentence, authorities said. The death of Navaly, a 47-year-old former lawyer, robs the desperate Russian opposition of its most courageous leader, as Putin prepares for an election where he will keep the former KGB spy in power until at least 2030. There is now no opposition leader with such prominence left in Russia. For some urban Russians, Navaly offered a hope of an alternative future to Putin, who has served as Russia's paramount leader longer than anyone since Joseph Stalin. Navaly rose to prominence more than a decade ago by documenting and speaking publicly about what he said was vast corruption and opulence amongst the crooks and thieves running Putin's Russia in the Federal Penitentiary Service of Yamlo-Nets Autonomous District said in a statement that Navaly felt unwell after a walk in the IK3 penal colony in Karp, about 1,900 kilometers, about 1,200 miles northeast of Moscow. He lost consciousness almost immediately and died shortly after, despite efforts by the prison medical team and ambulance staff, it said, adding that resuscitation attempts failed. His wife, Yulia, told Munich Security Conference that she could not be sure her husband was dead because Putin and his government lie incessantly. I want to be very clear that him just breaking down and dying like that is indicative of probably being poisoned, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, taking away the opposition, disheartening the Russian opposition before an election that Putin was slated to win by wide margins anyways. I think back to the former Russian oligarch and his daughter who were murdered in a British park a few years ago with, again, no jail time for those that were accused. At the end of the day, Putin's Russia is an authoritarian hell state where free speech goes to die, and the right wing in this country's continued incessant obsession with authoritarian dictatorial figures such as Putin and their love of Russia spits in the face of their predecessors like Ronald Reagan, George Bush Sr., and Richard the fuck Nixon. Now, while I hate all of those men for justifiably moral reasons, because their policies, both economic and social, were objectively harmful, and while Nixon was the president that started the EPA and the Clean Water Act, he didn't stop. He wanted to stay in office, so he passed that shit anyways. Regardless, at the end of the day, Ronald Reagan is turning in his grave, and not for the reasons that I would like. The Republican Party is a fascist hell state, and yeah, I know we're talking about Russia, but seeing Tucker Carlson's propensity to go over there and just absolutely deep throat Putin's cock and still get embarrassed and told he was pathetic to his face by Putin will never stop being hilarious. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This has been your HIMediaTV news update. I am your host. Please consider donating at himedia.gg/donate, and we have a subathon on March the 1st, 2024 at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'd love to see you there. Have a lovely rest of your day, everybody. Have a good night.